wondering if Dr. Mamoon Banat is with us. Dr. Mamoon, can you show yourself if you are already on the stage? I cannot see Dr. Mamoon.
So I'm starting recording now. Hopefully it's gonna work. I've been trying this for 3 hours, I would say. So, yeah, Rob. Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Hi everyone, my name is Mamoon Banat. I'm a senior embryologist. I'm working at Olive Fertility Center in Canada. And I am right now in Jordan for a short visit. And I've been invited by my friend and colleague BANAT to present a topic at one of the Q&A sessions with the Jordanian Society for Fertility and Genetics. It was a very nice experience. I was very happy to meet lots of colleagues and friends. And thank you, Dr. Khadan Khamais, as well for having us yesterday. So if you don't know Jordan, for those who are watching this video, once you arrive Jordan, you have to try the shawarma Arabi. Since I have arrived 2 weeks ago, I had already 6 shawarma Arabi. It's very tasty and it's very nice. And I'm leaving next week. I may take another one shawarma Arabi before leaving. So yeah, let's start the topic. So the topic is, should we go to day 7? And when we're saying to day 7, are we talking about like embryo transfer, freezing, or biopsy? All these answers, all these questions will be answered by the end of this very short presentation. In the beginning, like, not everyone likes to change. Changing is something that people want to avoid. They don't want to change because everybody will be happy with what they have learned and what they are practicing. And changing always is something that needs challenge, I would say. So if you're happy with your results, why to change? Just stay with whatever you are doing. But if you move to a different place or different country or different city, you might be forced to change because maybe the lab director has another vision. Maybe the city or the country has like another regulation or rules that you have to follow. So I have shortlisted here some like main points that why people need to change. The first thing, maybe the experience. So like personal experience and maybe what you have studied, what you have did during the research, the work, and so if you gain more experience, you think you should do something new. And sometimes you have to change your practice if you are working with different cultures. Like some cultures, the people, they are educated, they would be like on a level of awareness that they would know maybe the complications of twins, where other countries or other cultures would be happy if they had like twins or triplets after IVF trial. And from here, we could say why people would be happy after having like this, like news, like saying that you have triplet or twins, even though that there are complications because the economical situation would play a role in that, and the social stress as well, like from the family, friends. So and some countries would cover these expenses, while others they would suffer to get this money to cover their IVF trial. As well, sometimes your practice will be different if the timing is a factor, like if your patient will be traveling very soon, or if she's getting old, or if she is going through some chemotherapy or having some like medical history. So your practices will be different, as well as I've said before, the regulation and the rules of the country or the city. Like sometimes within the same country in different cities, you would have like different like regulation authorities like that will allow you or will not allow you to do some techniques like embryo freezing or embryo biopsy for genetic testing or for sex selection, egg freezing, sperm freezing. All these things will go under the authority and the regulation, and if they will not allow you, so you have to change your practice. Well, other countries, they would say you can't culture embryos beyond like day 1. So once you see the 2 p.m., you have to freeze the embryos and just keep 2 for culturing and do the transfer. So, and all these even regulation and laws are changing with time. And as well, the workload, like if you're working in a very busy place, your practice will be different. If you're working in like a place where we're doing maybe 1 or 2 cycles per day. So again, if you gain more experience, if you gain like more, if you are exposed to new techniques or new literature or new research, new findings, sometimes you have maybe to try to change. And examples of like these things is IVF versus ICSI. freeze all versus fresh embryo transfer, day 3 embryo transfer versus day 5 embryo transfers. And here I'm not going to discuss like which is better, like day 3 or day 5. It's not my topic. But we all know that like the implantation happen or take place on day 5. And for those who are not doing embryo transfer on day 5, they might be pushing some cases from their cycles to go for day 5, but under some certain criteria, like if they have a good number of embryos, let's say 7 or more, and they were like good grading, at least 4 grade 1, and if the case is going to be biopsied for PGTA or BGD, and then they're going to do the biopsy on day 3, and the results will come up, and they will do the embryo transfer on day 5. And I'm not here as well to discuss which is better to do embryo biopsy on day 3 or day 5. And sometimes it's upon the patient preference. If he would say, or they would say, I want to transfer my embryos on day 3, or I want to transfer my embryos on day 5. So we all know that the implantation takes place, as I said, on day 5. And I will just try to turn on my pointer. I don't know if it's going to work. It should be working. Yes. So yeah, the implantation starts here. I would say it's going to start invading the uterus cavity on day 5 after the embryo will be hatched and going out of the zona and start invading the uterus. And the implantation would take like another 4 days to 5 days, I would say, to be fully implanted in the uterus cavity. And like IVF has too many controversial, like we all knew that before compaction, the embryo would need less glucose, high in pyruvate and high lactate, and after compaction, the embryo will need high glucose and lower pyruvate and lower lactate, as well as other amino acids, essential and non-essential amino acids. But still, we find out now we have a single single-step media, culture media, where you put the embryo and just leave it from day 0 to day 6 without changing on the embryo. Just keep it there, and you can watch the embryo from your time lapse or from your embryoscope and see it like by the camera that you have, and all see all the division, and then choose the embryo for transfer or for biopsy or for freezing. And still, we have the sequential media where you have to change the media on day 3 or day 5 maybe. So the next, okay. So Blastocyst grading. If you're pushing to day 5, so you have to have criteria to choose the best embryo for transfer, for biopsy, or for freezing. And every lab has its own criteria for freezing, for biopsy, and for embryo transfer. And I'm not here to discuss which criteria is the best. So every lab will choose the embryo upon their own experience, I would say, and upon like what they have results in the lab. And again, it's like this day 3. So when you go to day 3 and you want to decide, should I biopsy this embryo, or should I not biopsy this embryo, you would see the fragmentation, number of cells, and the division, and you choose the best embryo for embryo transfer or for biopsy or for freezing. The same thing on day 5. If the embryo is not good, even if it was still dividing, still in progress, but you feel it's not fit for the biopsy or for freezing for embryo transfer, you might just leave it for one more day. And this is the routine practice, I would say. People will leave it to day 6 and see if there is any more changing or any progress, so you can proceed with freezing or biopsy. So there is grading, as in this picture, like Gardner, you would go from early blastocyst to hatched blastocyst, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this stands for the expansion and the hatching or hatched embryo. And then it's A, B, or C, and that's upon what's the quality of the inner cell mass and the trophoderm. So sometimes you will see an embryo on a borderline. You can't tell if, shall I freeze it, shall I just wait? If it was a little bit more expanded, if the inner cell mass was more like cohesive, I would go for freezing for biopsy. So this is, like the lecture saying, what will happen if the embryo was on borderline on day 6? Shall we leave it, or it doesn't matter? So let's see. And one more thing, that grading the embryo is subjective. So what I may grade as a 4BB, my colleague could grade it as 4BA. Okay, what I could grade as 5BC, my colleague would grade it as 5CB. So it's subjective, and it's like never would be the same, like between embryologists in the same lab, and it's different from eye to eye, and sometimes you have to move the embryo like under microscope, just to make sure what is the good grade. And sometimes the embryo will trick you because it will expand and collapse, and you need to know if it did that, if it did that or not. And we're gonna see some video on that as well in a bit. So sometimes, as we said, some embryos are slow in progress, and the reason behind that, we're gonna discuss it in just a few seconds. And it might be the cause of the infertility. So like the embryo, when it reaches to hatch blastocyst and it's ready to be implanted in the uterus, it's already late. It's already not synchronized with the lining of the uterus. So it might be the cause of the infertility. And the plastulation rate in any lab will be affected by how the QC in the lab going on. Like if you have a very strict QC and a good QC, you should have a good plastulation rate in the lab. Like in terms of media, the incubator, and let's just keep the genetic aside. So in the term of media, incubator, and other QC that you are doing in the lab, as well the embryologist, the technician that is working in the lab. And sometimes the plastulation will affect by the genetics. So some studies saying that if the embryo is aneuploidy, that means it's going to be in slow in progress. However, not too many studies support this status. So this review is a very good one, I would say. It's being published in Human Reproduction, and they have collected lots of data. And it's a new one. It's being published in 2018. Not that new, but still, it's good. And they have collected lots of data from different studies. And when we say day 7 culture for embryo, you'd say something, you would think that it's something new. Well, in this study, I was like shocked that the first cultures that started for day 7, it was in 2008. And what they found out that on like day 7 blastocysts have implantation rate between 17 and 56%, and clinical pregnancy rate between 20 and 56%, and the live birth rate for day 7 blastocysts varies between 11 and 42%, and this is like good numbers. And there is limited evidence on whether day 7 blastocysts result in lower pregnancy and live birth rate relative to day 5 and day 6. And there's another like nice finding where they said that the more expanded your blastocyst is, the more higher, and it's the higher live birth rate that you may have. So if you have like 3 BB on day 5 and you waited one more day to day 6 and it became a 5 BB, what they're saying is it's more beneficial and it has a higher live birth rate. However, some other labs will be happy with having 3 BB on day 5 and will just go and straight away and freeze it. So again, it's every lab has their own criteria for freezing and biopsy. And again, so why the embryo is slow? According to what they have mentioned in this review, it might be lots of factors, starting with the age or the FSH or a combination of lots of factors. Okay, and some said is the aneuploidy, but again, this evidence, although I would just read it from there. So although there is evidence that aneuploid embryo may progress through blastocyst development at lower rate, this has not been supported by all studies. So it might be, but it's not like 100% thing, because still you may find a normal embryo, euploid embryo, that is slow in progress. And this table from this review is very nice. So you can see here from 2008 and the studies or the data that they have collected till 2017, and this is the number of the embryo that were included and the percentage of day 7 blastocysts cryopreserved or biopsied out of total number of blastocysts utilized. And you can see it's very low number that will reach to day 7. So you don't expect to see too many embryos like reaching day 7, like having 100% blastocyst in day 7. No, it's not. It's not like, it doesn't work like that. So you should have like good blastocyst rate on day 5 and 6. But if you push embryo to day 7, the percentage that you may have something that is good or fit for freezing or for biopsy would go between 2% to 8% of the total embryos. And again, you can see every study, they had their own criteria, like the minimum criteria for the grading for the embryo for freezing or biopsy. So for this study, they chose 4 BB and more, and there's one 3 cc, and the other one is 5 cc. So it's different. Every lab has its own criteria, and I'm not going to say which one is better than the other. But we can see here the implantation rate following frozen embryo transfer. So the implantation rate is 44, 43, 30, and like 50, 56. So it's like good rate, good percentage. The same thing with clinical pregnancy rate following frozen embryo transfer. And I'll try to move my picture from here. Okay, and live birth rate as well following frozen embryo transfer. So it's always frozen embryo transfer, as you can see, frozen embryo transfer, frozen embryo transfer. So never fresh embryo transfer for day 7 embryos. And the other thing is the average number for embryo that they have transferred range between 1 and 2. So it's almost single embryo transfer. All right. Oops. Okay. I don't know what I did. I'm still training, as I said. Okay. Let's go to that slide, please. Thank you. Okay. So there are more studies, presentations, discussions supporting this opinion that embryos will benefit from culturing the embryo one more day, especially those embryos that you believe they were not fit on day 6 for freezing biopsy. So you say it's like on a borderline and you don't feel comfortable doing it, just leave it for one more day and see if it changes. So again, this study, I would say, so a patient with slower growing embryos requiring extended culture to day 7 can be comforted in knowing that these embryos can be used for transfer and that successful pregnancy outcome is achievable. So it's, again, and more studies as well were published, like this one in fertility and sterility in 2020. And this one was comparing with a comparison of conversion and aneuploidy rate between related IVF laboratory with different volumes. And they are suggesting that busy IVF labs would benefit or they might be seeing more embryos on day 7 because sometimes the timing and they can't just go with the procedure timing because they're busy. So they would benefit and they might be seeing more Blastocyst on day 7 than smaller labs. And more studies as well. So even like frozen eggs, they would benefit from this, leaving embryos for one more day. And so what about like day 7 embryo transfer? So if you want to say, what about day 7 embryo transfer, let's go to day 6 embryo transfer and see what the studies are saying. So this study here saying elective embryo transfers on day 6 reduce implantation compared with transfers on day 5. So they said you just should avoid transferring embryos on day 6. And if it was very difficult, like the patient can't come or something happened, it's better to freeze the embryo and just do frozen embryo transfer for the next cycle and not to transfer the embryo on day 6 of the current cycle. And this was published at Human Reproduction in 2017. So more studies as well for the frozen embryo. What if you did freezing on day 6 and then on the next cycle you wanted to do the frozen embryo transfer? So again, you should avoid transferring the embryos on day 6 and go with day 5. Okay, however, since IVF field is a controversial field, I've seen this paper or this review. It was published on 2002 and at Fertility and Sterility, and they claim that day 6 Blastocyst transfer increased the pregnancy, implantation, and live birth rates compared to day 5 Blastocyst transfer in human IVF embryo transfer. And again, so what? Again, if I want to go back to the first slide that I said different practice, so it depends on what you have studied, what you have learned, what you have gained through your experience, and what studies that you feel that this is what you want to work on and to follow. So at the end, very low number of embryos that will reach to day 7. Again, it was less than 8%, and they were fit for biopsy and freeze. And day 7 embryo might be higher in aneuploidy, that's correct. But still, the relationship between the aneuploidy and the slow progress or the embryo development, it's still not clear. And still, we have acceptable implantation rate, clinical pregnancy rate, and live birth rate of transferring frozen embryo transfer for day 7. And the patient could, with a confident, transferring these embryos if they have no euploid embryo from day 5 or day 6. So if it was the last chance for you, just do it and freeze it. Day 7 blastocysts have not been reported to be candidate for fresh embryo transfer in any of the published studies. From here, I guess that's the end of the presentation. What is beyond day 7? Maybe next year we'll hear something new. We know that there are too many ethical issues and concerns about like culturing embryo beyond that day. Well, we still will learn maybe something new. Maybe you'll have some new data available by the next year. We know that with animals, I guess they have cultured embryos beyond that stage. And that's it for now. Thank you very much. I will show you just few videos. Let's just turn the pointer off. Okay, so hopefully it's gonna work. يا سلام ممتاز. زي ما حكيت انا عم بتدرب على البرنامج، فان شاء الله يكون سجل كل اللي حكيته، ما نكون ضيعنا وقت. الساعة صارت 1 بالليل. اوكي. التوقيت اللي على الشاشة هذا توقيت فانكوفر I think. طيب زي ما انتم شايفين هون as you can see it's a 3 BB embryo I guess, and they want to do biopsy. So other embryos would say no, would never do this, and they would rather to wait till the embryo is expanded. However, you can see the biopsy is going very nice away from the inner cell mass here, and took some cells and ready to go. Well, while other labs would say no, they would rather to wait, and we can say you're wrong or you're correct. Everyone has his own background, I would say. So again, where is the presentation? Here. Okay. All right. So في شيء طيب دقيقة البوينتر تقريبا اختفت من عندي. Okay, try. Right. مش شايف الماوس I guess. Anyway, I'll try to share the other videos, and I will just explain what happened. So the other video is talking about a collapsing embryo before freezing. So it's a 6, so it's hatched, and you know it's very difficult to hold it with the stripper tips. So you just hit it with a laser, collapse the embryo, and then start your freezing. And you have to do it as well very fast because the embryo could go back and expand. So you just hit it and go for freezing. And the other video is about day 5, 6, 7, collapse, expand, repeat. Yeah. So this one was an embryo that being monitored under microscope, under embryoscope, and you can see the embryo going on expanding, collapsing, expanding, collapsing, expanding, collapsing. But it reached very nice, like 6 embryos. It was hatched. So those who are working with the embryoscope, they would say like this is a bad indication if the embryo was collapsed and it expanded a few times. And for those who want to do biopsy and they're not using the embryoscopes, it would be difficult to say, like, is this embryo good for biopsy or for freezing, because they would see it collapse. However, still, you can see check the zona. If it was thin, and then you see the embryo is very like small and the zona is already expanded, so you would say already it's expanded. So yeah, you can just figure out saying it was expanded and collapsed. However, it might be a little bit tricky when you're doing the biopsy. So I think by this, I would just, again, thank you everyone for watching. Hopefully it was a good presentation. Thank you very much for your time. And please, if you have any suggestion or anything, let me know. يعطيكم ألف عافية والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.